But now on YTV, Nocon on photography.
18 months ago, His Royal Highness the Duke of York Prince Andrew was commissioned by the Post Office to take photographs for a new series of 4 postage stamps, which are being launched this week. I'm Nocon, and as photographic advisor to Prince Andrew, I've been helping him. And this program looks at the complicated process of taking just one of these photographs of Edinburgh Castle and seeing it transformed into this sheet of stamps. By now, most people know of Prince Andrew's interest in photography. His pictures of his daughter, Princess Beatrice, were shown all over the world. But Prince Andrew does more than just take snaps for the family album.
And now to celebrate a second birth, and it's the birth of 4 high-value, definitive Royal Mail stamps.
One of the reasons he was commissioned as a photographer by the Post Office was on the basis of a solid portfolio of work shot over the past 5 years. With the launch of these 4 stamps, the results of his photographic work will be seen by millions of people all over the world. It all began in April 1987 when Prince Andrew was asked by the British Post Office to take photographs of different castles in the United Kingdom for a new series of postage stamps. The castles were Edinburgh in Scotland, Carnarvon in Wales, Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland, and Windsor in England. Great Britain's penny black was the world's first postage stamp, issued in 1840. Before that, Britain's mail system was operated by the royal messengers, hence the present title Royal Mail. Who more appropriate, therefore, to design a set of stamps than a member of the royal family? Every year, hundreds of photographs are taken of Edinburgh Castle, but Prince Andrew's needed just a little more preparation. But unlike other photographers, his royal duties and concern over his personal security prevented him from surveying the location in advance. That task he gave to me and to Barry Robinson, the design director for the Post Office. I came up earlier this year, Barry, to take some pictures of the castle. And you were saying that we can't take any pictures from this angle. Why is that?
Well, our problem is, Gene, that the 4 stamps have to be instantly recognisable, and that the 4 stamps have to live together as a coordinated set of 4. And if you actually look at the photographs that you took of the castles earlier in the year, that's Windsor, that's Carnarvon, and that's Carrickfergus, you can see that we've basically got a choice of either coming in close to the castle, or else in the case of Edinburgh, showing as much of the castle as you can. Now, if you actually analyse that shot, you'd find that the castle itself occupies a very thin band. And therefore, for that reason, I think if you actually went further down there and got a shot something like that, it actually distills the essence of the castle and works much better on a stamp. So shall we go down there, have a look?
Let's go.
Okay, fine.
So with the sun silhouetting the castle, we moved about 200 meters and found the ideal location.
And the interesting thing is, if you actually look at the trial print that we've got here, you can see that we can add 2 important pieces of information: the denomination and the Queen's head.
what final form these stamps take?
Well, these stamps would be what we call our high-value definitive range. These are the normal stamps that are on sale every day, and these are a special issue set of stamps. This one's on Scottish heraldry. So this new set of stamps is going to fall halfway between the two, in as much as it's going to be pictorial, but they will be on sale for many years to come once they're issued.
It was a month after that initial recce that we waited to greet His Royal Highness outside the headquarters of the Scottish Post Office in Edinburgh. He had barely 2 hours to spare to take the photograph, and it was our job now to brief Prince Andrew on the day's shoot and to outline once again just exactly what we were looking for from his photograph.
I've looked at alternative positionings and alternative typefaces, and we've also looked at the possibility of incorporating a caption. At this
Since
point
hundreds of millions of copies of this one stamp will eventually be printed, it was crucially important to get the design right. Barry Robinson's office had used our recce pictures to prepare some mock-ups. These would help Prince Andrew visualize how his photograph would eventually be used.
Names be underneath, because not everyone would know.
Again, it's very much the post office's wish as to how they want to do it. It's my job to take the photograph and then to come up with a suitable surrounds later on.
It would be up to a special post office committee some 6 months later to decide finally which design to adopt. But first, we had to take the photograph.
I think, is this a vantage point? Is it anywhere near here?
Something like that.
That's looking
It's all right.
quite
I'll
nice.
just drop all this.
Very good.
I'll put that in there.
For the last 4 years, Prince Andrew has used a Hasselblad medium format camera.
No,
For this
no.
particular shoot, he had a standard 80mm lens.
We shoot it without the filter first.
Bearing in mind we only had this one opportunity, we used a number of different filters to try and give a variety of
Are we
contrasts.
polarizing?
There's a separate attachment on the back of the Hasselblad which allows Polaroid prints to be made so that we could check exposure and composition.
Do you want the whole of the castle in? Because I'm going to have to move back and left of this one.
I don't know. I don't think we can extend it too far left. That corner on the right's fairly critical, and I think we've got to get that edge in there and the hard drop of the rock beneath it. I think... Can I just have a look in there?
Because I think you're going to have to close it round it.
Yes. Yes. Right.
I think that's about right. I'll just have a look inside there.
Well, that's fine.
I've given you a bit more
5.6.
sky, Gene.
Right.
Sir?
I've given you a bit more sky so that you can bring it down a bit if you have to, because I realise you're cutting off the bottom,
Oh, yes. That's
so that I've taken it up a bit.
The statue's on there. Oh, that's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. We're having to shoot at a 15 to 5.6, sir.
Well, I wasn't far wrong, was I?
Close, but no cigar. Right. Okay, Barry.
All right.
Pull it.
Okay.
You know how to do it?
Unfortunately, we've got some cloud in the background, which is going to make a difference. Yellow filter, please, Gene.
Is that it, sir?
Yeah, yellow filter, please.
Right.
The yellow filter would enhance the contrast, but would also cut out some light.
That on?
To compensate, Prince Andrew would have to increase the exposure by half a stop.
Butterfingers here, drop it.
Half a stop open, sir. Just bang these away.
Sure,
I
it is
reckon. No. Other way. Yes, sir.
That's right.
Oops, that's it. That's it. Half a stop there. Haven't changed anything else. Nope. Focus. Okay. I just carry on taking the happy snaps. One.
In the end, Prince Andrew took 48 pictures from this vantage point, and this contact sheet represents the culmination of months of preparation, but still only took us to the halfway point in the project. From this sheet, the final picture was chosen and printed, to go forward to the engraver to make the stamp. This is the printing works of Harrison and Sons in High Wycombe. It was here that Prince Andrew's photograph was transformed into an engraving from which the stamps would be printed. His photograph was taken by the engraver, who first picked out all the most important shapes. In order to make his job easier, high contrast prints were necessary to highlight these details. As the final stamp will be hand engraved in reverse, the engraver worked from this reversal image reduced to stamp size. Chris Matthews was the skilled engraver assigned to the project. The painstaking work of engraving one photograph onto the stamped die took 3 weeks of intense concentration. The process is called intaglio printing, one of the oldest, but used because it is the most difficult to copy. It was a tense moment when we went to see the first proof of the Edinburgh stamp run off. The engraved plate was inked, and then the excess ink polished off before being put through the printing press. So after months of careful work, we saw the final proof.
That's the final copy.
That's right. We should have a closer look.
It took a total of 5 months to photograph all the castles. And behind each photograph, there were more problems than were immediately apparent.
Edinburgh.
Even the sea wouldn't obey royalty at Carnarvon.
The recce shot that I saw, of course, had a high tide. And unfortunately, when we had to go and take the photograph, we were slightly stymied by the fact that there was a low tide. Yes, there was rather more people at Carrickfergus when we took this. There are about 40 officers of the RUC hiding behind various rocks and pillars and boats.
What we thought would be the easiest photograph of all would be of Windsor Castle, being so close to home.
Well, this, we had a problem that was beyond our control, which was that the round tower required a certain amount of maintenance, and it was being cleaned. And we've had to wait until the end, right till the end of March, to get this one in, with constant telephone calls to the superintendent of the castle saying, terribly sorry, but the Department of Environment can't take the scaffolding down yet. And then we were told 2 or 3 weeks ago that they were going to take it down. And this is the last one, and it's taken us the longest to do. And it's also going to be the cleanest photograph.
Barry and I did the initial legwork. Does it disappoint you that you can't do that yourself?
Yes, it does in a way, but being heavily involved with the Navy means that I can't actually spend the time doing the legwork, apart from Windsor, of course, which is home ground and home territory. Even so, the time that is spent recceing, I mean, Carrickfergus is an excellent example. It's very difficult for me to wander around in Northern Ireland without a certain amount of hassle. Whereas for you to go and do the recce in Northern Ireland, you were there for a day, day and a half doing the recce, and then you came back and discussed with me with a map where the best point and the best time of day to take the photograph was from. And in the outcome, I mean, we were there for, what, 15 minutes to take the photograph?
Cynics would say that with a top camera and a number of assistants, anyone could take a good photograph. But Prince Andrew's solo efforts reveal his own very distinct style.
everybody who produces any form of art will have it criticised. I must say that the only thing that I find not necessarily amazing or strange, but odd, is that somebody who's criticising your work, or not necessarily criticising it, but reviewing it, will see something in it and say something about it that you've never ever thought about. And I sort of think, oh, but I never thought of that. I mean, why didn't I think of it? Oh, don't be so silly. Of course, I would never have thought of that. And sometimes it's interesting to see what people have to say, and other times, well, there's always the standard sour grapes reaction. I mean, there are both. You get criticised for whatever you do.
And quite honestly, who really is capable of criticizing? Who is that man that can justify his position, that can criticize?
I've no idea. I mean, anybody can criticise as much as they like. I mean, everybody has their personal view of an individual piece of art. I have my views, and they differ probably from yours. I like certain things that other people don't like.
Certainly, the photographs that you've taken of members of the royal family, such as the Duchess of York, for instance, and Her Majesty the Queen for her 60th birthday, are some of, to me, the most informal and yet the most sympathetic view.
Well, I don't necessarily think that that's possibly the way I looked at it. I mean, I think that if one wants to take a good photograph, you have to know something about photography and the technical aspects. Secondly, I think that time spent in reconnaissance is well spent. And if you get to know your subject and the person or the item, whatever it is that you're going to take a photograph of, that also helps, because the person that you're taking the photograph of isn't quite as nervous or apprehensive about having their photograph taken. Well, I'm known as a bit of a pain in the neck in the family in taking photographs of people, but...
You are?
Yeah, well,
why is that?
Well, because one gets criticised and one gets treated very much as another photographer that you know, takes the photographs from a long way away and is a pain in the neck and intrusive. And I get the same sort of criticism at home, but everybody is.
Snaps.
Well, yes, but taking the photographs of the Queen and Sarah are great fun, because there's never really a great deal of pressure from me for them to do certain things. It's just for them to relax. And I think beyond that, the photograph of the Queen that I took is a very personal photograph in terms of it's what I would see my mother as, if you see what I mean, and that is the way that I see the Queen as a person, yes, rather than as a head of state. Although I see her as the head of state as well. Whereas other official photographs actually portray her as the head of state rather than as a mother. It's a very small difference, but that's the way it is. And again, with Sarah, it's very difficult for me to portray her in any other way except as a very loving wife. I have a certain flair and relationship with Sarah that will produce a photograph that nobody else can produce. I enjoy taking her. She enjoys having her photograph taken by me. And over the years, you know, we'll build up a sort of family library of our own photographs. I don't know whether I'd like to take photographs of myself, officially. I think I would get it wrong, because I would see myself in a different light to how somebody else would take a photograph of me, if you see what I mean. That's why I think the photographs that Terry O'Neill took of Sarah and I recently were very good, because he managed to capture the two of us together. There are many more photographs that I've got that I would never consider putting on exhibition, purely because I would never want to be so disloyal as to put those sort of photographs on exhibition. And there are many personal photographs that mean too much to me to put out.
In fact, as I know from printing them, Prince Andrew has many hundreds of photographs in his collection.
I suppose now it's become a sort of drug, in the fact that I quite enjoy taking the photographs and seeing the end result. it's very difficult to see from a contact or an ordinary colour print what a photograph would actually look like, unless you blow it up to something about this sort of size, and then the cost starts to come into it, and one gets used to looking at contacts and contact negatives to be able to see what is and what isn't a good photograph. I have a bad habit, or certainly Sarah says I have a bad habit of taking 2 photographs all the time, but I always have a second photograph. If you see, I take one and I always sort of duplicate it with a second one. Mostly as insurance, but also because I think that if one works, then one's always got a spare in case one has a problem with a negative. So,
Some of Prince Andrew's favorite subjects are landscapes, like these pictures he took in Canada. Bleak, somber, isolated.
Remember when we were looking at these photographs and said, is there some underlying theme, underlying message?
I don't think anybody should see, necessarily should see a message in what I take photographs of. I think that the word you're thinking of was reclusive?
No, isolation, I think.
Isolation?
Wasn't that? I mean, in every one of your photographs, even the ones of the stamps, though you're surrounded by lots and lots of people, what
well,
you
the stamps are slightly different in
yes.
the stamps needed to be, didn't need anybody in them. I tend to look at landscape and portraiture in isolation and don't put the two together very often. I take personal photographs that perhaps some people might want to use. I would prefer to continue as a sort of hobbyist rather than as an active professional or active amateur in the field, and I don't wish to take either any type of work away from anybody else who's more capable of doing it than I am. And like the post office, they actually asked if I would take this particular set of stamps because of the various connections. And I'm very happy to do those sort of things, and I don't think it's inappropriate for me to do so, but otherwise I think it's the domain of people who can actually do it a great deal better than me.
It was this sentiment that Prince Andrew was to repeat on the day when his work finally went public. At the press launch of the 4 stamps, the results of his hobby were there for all to see. He again played down his role as photographer.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to say thank you very much indeed to the post office for having the guts, I suppose, to invite me to take these pictures for the stamps. It goes back to 1986 when we visited Harrison's for the engagement stamps, or the wedding stamps as they were known then. And someone rather foolishly suggested that perhaps I ought to take a set of stamps later on. Well, somebody, I suppose, had an idea that this was quite a good idea. And so look what happened.